You know that feeling when your own son stands up at your retirement party and uses his toast to explain to everyone why you never lived up to your potential? I'm Margaret, and at 63 years old, I thought I'd seen enough of life to not be surprised anymore. I was wrong. Let me back up. For 25 years, I worked as the head librarian at Riverside Community College. Not glamorous, I know. My son David certainly reminded me of that fact every chance he got. David's a tenured professor at State University, teaches political science, and he's never let me forget that he made something of himself, while I, well, just stamped books and shushed students. The thing is, I loved my job. I loved helping nursing students find research for their papers at 2 in the morning. I loved teaching ESL students how to navigate academic databases. I loved the quiet satisfaction of building a collection that served our community. But to David and his wife Jennifer, I was just a librarian. They'd introduce me at faculty mixers with this apologetic tone, like I was a embarrassment they had to explain away. Mom works at a community college, David would say, with emphasis on community, like it was a dirty word. She's always been more comfortable in a support role. Jennifer was worse. She taught sociology at the same university as David. And she had this way of patting my hand and saying things like, "It must be nice to have such a simple job. No pressure, no deadlines. I wish I could just, relax like that." I'd bite my tongue because I didn't want to cause friction. David was my only child. His father passed when David was 12, and I'd raised him alone while working full-time and going to night school to finish my bachelor's degree. It took me 8 years, but I did it. I'd hoped he'd understand the value of education pursued at any pace, at any age. Instead, he seemed embarrassed that his mother took so long to do what he'd accomplished by 22. The retirement party was David's idea. He insisted on hosting it at the faculty club at State University, not at Riverside where I'd actually worked. "More prestigious," he said. "You deserve a nice send-off, Mom, not some sad gathering in a community college library." I didn't want a party at all, honestly. I had plans. Plans I hadn't told David about because, well, he'd proven over the years that he wasn't particularly interested in my plans. The party was on a Saturday afternoon in May. Beautiful day, sunshine streaming through the tall windows of the faculty club. About 80 people showed up, a mix of my colleagues from Riverside, David and Jennifer's academic friends, and some family. My sister Carol flew in from Phoenix. My best friend Rita came, looking concerned. She knew what I'd been dealing with. David had appointed himself master of ceremonies. He stood at the front of the room with a microphone, looking every bit the confident professor in his blazer and wire-rimmed glasses. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my mother's retirement," he began. The room quieted. Margaret Porter has spent 25 years at Riverside Community College. And while that might not seem like a long career to some of you, he paused for the polite laughter from his university colleagues. "I think we can all agree it's time for her to finally rest." I felt my stomach tighten. Rita squeezed my hand under the table. "My mother," David continued, "has always been content with modest goals. She raised me as a single parent, which I appreciate, but she never really pursued her own ambitions. She got her bachelor's degree when I was in high school, took her 8 years more laughter, and then she settled into this comfortable librarian position." Jennifer was nodding along, smiling at me like this was all very sweet. I used to ask her, "Mom, don't you want to do more? Go back to school? Get a graduate degree?" But she'd always say she was happy where she was. He shook his head fondly, like I was a child who'd refused to eat vegetables. And I've come to accept that not everyone is driven by ambition. Some people are content to support others rather than lead. And that's okay. The room was silent, except for a few uncomfortable coughs. My colleagues from Riverside looked mortified. Carol's face was red with anger. "So here's to Margaret Porter." David raised his glass. "A woman who knew her limitations and made peace with them. A woman who chose stability over risk, comfort over challenge. May your retirement be as peaceful and uneventful as your career has been." People clinked glasses half-heartedly. I sat there with a frozen smile, my cheeks burning. This was supposed to be a celebration, And my own son had just spent 5 minutes explaining to a room full of people that I was unambitious and mediocre. Jennifer stood up next. Oh good, I thought bitterly. Round 2. I just want to add, Jennifer said, taking the microphone from David, that Margaret has always been such a calming presence in our lives. She never complains, never pushes back, just accepts things as they are. It's actually quite zen, if you think about it. She smiled at me. When David got his tenure, Margaret was so excited for him. When I published my book, she bought 5 copies. She's always celebrated our achievements, even though she never pursued that kind of success herself. That takes a special kind of humility. The word humility landed like a slap. She meant defeat. She meant settling. And now, finally, at 63, Margaret can stop working and just be. No more trying to figure out what she wants to be when she grows up. Jennifer laughed at her own joke. A few people laughed with her, nervous and awkward. I wanted to stand up and leave. I wanted to tell them both exactly what I thought of their condescending, cruel speeches. But I sat there, silent, because that's what I'd always done. That's what they expected of me. My sister Carol started to stand, her face furious, but I put a hand on her arm. Don't, I whispered. Not yet. Because here's what David and Jennifer didn't know, what I hadn't told them because they'd never asked, never seemed interested. For the past 8 years, while working full-time at Riverside, I'd been enrolled in a doctoral program at Columbia University. Long distance, summers in New York. Online coursework during the school year. I'd been studying information science with a focus on digital accessibility and how marginalized communities interact with academic resources. And 2 weeks ago, I'd successfully defended my dissertation, Dr. Margaret Porter, Ph.D. But that wasn't even the best part. As Jennifer sat down, looking pleased with herself, there was movement at the back of the room. A tall woman in her 60s, silver hair cut sharp, wearing an elegant navy suit, made her way through the tables. I recognized her immediately. My heart started pounding. Dr. Helen Vance, Dean of the Library and Information Science Program at Columbia. She'd called me 2 days ago with news I still hadn't processed. David saw her approaching and frowned slightly, trying to figure out who she was. She didn't look like a community college employee. Dr. Vance walked straight to the microphone. She didn't ask permission, just took it from Jennifer's hand with a polite smile that had steel underneath. Excuse me, Dr. Vance said, her voice carrying easily through the room. I apologize for interrupting, but I've just driven 3 hours from New York, and I couldn't let this occasion pass without saying a few words about Dr. Porter. The room went completely still. David's face went blank with confusion. Dr. Porter? Jennifer said, looking around like there must be another person with that name. Yes, Dr. Vance said crisply. Dr. Margaret Porter, who 2 weeks ago successfully defended her doctoral dissertation at Columbia University with distinction. Her research on digital library accessibility for underserved populations is groundbreaking. Her dissertation committee, which I chaired, unanimously agreed it was one of the finest pieces of scholarship we've seen in the last decade. You could have heard a pin drop. David's mouth was actually hanging open. Dr. Vance turned to look directly at me, her expression warm. Margaret, I came here today because I wanted to deliver this news in person, surrounded by people who know you, though I'm beginning to think they don't know you nearly as well as they should. She paused, letting that sink in. Columbia University's Board of Trustees has approved the creation of a new endowed chair position, the Porter Chair, in Democratic Information Access. It's named for you, Margaret, in recognition of your groundbreaking work, and we are offering you this position. My sister Carol let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Rita was gripping my hand so hard it hurt. Dr. Vance continued, an endowed chair at Columbia, for those who may not be familiar, is one of the highest honors in academia. It comes with a significant research budget, graduate student funding, and the freedom to pursue whatever research you deem important. Margaret, you would be joining one of the most prestigious faculties in the world. I looked at David. His face had gone from confused to pale to something I'd never seen before. Shock. Shame. Maybe both. Jennifer was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "I know you haven't given me your answer yet," Dr. Vance said, speaking to me now instead of the room. "And I know this is a big decision, but I wanted you to hear this offer while surrounded by your community, so they can celebrate this extraordinary achievement with you." She held out a leather portfolio. "This contains the formal offer letter, details of the position, everything we discussed on the phone. Take your time. Though I hope you'll say yes, because Columbia needs voices like yours. The field needs voices like yours." I stood up on shaking legs. Walking to the front of the room felt like walking through water. Dr. Vance handed me the portfolio. And then, to my surprise, she hugged me. "You've earned this," she said quietly, "just for me. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." She released me and turned back to the room. "I'll leave you all to your celebration, though I hope you'll be celebrating the right things now." She gave David and Jennifer a look that could have frozen fire, then nodded to me and left. The room erupted. My Riverside colleagues surged forward, hugging me, crying, congratulating me. Rita was full-on sobbing. Carol was laughing and shaking her head in disbelief. I looked over at David. He was still standing at the head table, the microphone hanging loose in his hand. Jennifer was sitting down, her face buried in her hands. My colleague Tom, who'd been encouraging me through all 8 years of my PhD program, grabbed the microphone from David's limp grip. "For those of you who didn't know," Tom announced, his voice booming with pride, "Margaret has been working on her doctorate for 8 years while maintaining a full-time position at Riverside. She attended classes during summers, wrote her dissertation during winter breaks, and somehow still managed to be the best colleague and mentor any of us could ask for. Her research is being published by Oxford University Press next spring. She's been invited to present at international conferences, and she did all of this without fanfare, without asking for special treatment, without once complaining or bragging." He looked directly at David. "Some people measure success by titles and tenure. Margaret measured it by impact and integrity. And she succeeded beyond measure." The applause was thunderous. People were standing. My colleagues from Riverside were cheering. Even some of David and Jennifer's academic friends were clapping, looking uncomfortable but genuine. I finally found my voice. I walked to the microphone, and the room quieted. "Thank you," I said. And I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Thank you all for coming, for supporting me, for being part of my journey." I looked at David. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I want to say something about ambition," I said. "For a long time, I let other people define what ambition looked like. I thought maybe they were right, that I'd settled, that I'd taken the easy road. But I've learned something important. There is no easy road. Every path requires sacrifice and courage. Raising a child alone while going to school at night, working full-time while pursuing a doctorate, choosing to serve a community college instead of chasing prestige. These weren't easy choices. They were intentional ones." I paused, gathering my thoughts. I didn't tell my son about my PhD program, because he'd made it clear over the years that my choices weren't valuable to him, and I didn't want to hear his skepticism, his doubt, his concern that I was embarrassing myself. So I did it quietly. I did it for myself. Now I looked directly at David, and this time he met my gaze. He looked stricken. "But I want to be clear about something," I said. My voice stronger now. "Whether or not I had a PhD, whether or not Columbia had offered me this position, I still would have lived a life of value. The students I helped at Riverside mattered. The resources I built mattered. The community I served mattered. Success isn't just about prestigious institutions or impressive titles. It's about impact. It's about integrity. It's about showing up every day and doing work that matters, even if no one's applauding." The room was absolutely silent now. So yes, I'm proud of my doctorate. I'm honored by Columbia's offer. But I was already proud of my career at Riverside. I was already honored to have served my community. And I won't let anyone, not even my own family, make me feel small for choices that were never small to begin with. I set the microphone down. The applause started slowly, then built to something overwhelming. People were standing, crying, hugging each other. Carol pushed through the crowd. and grabbed me in a fierce hug. "That's my sister," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's my brilliant, beautiful, badass sister." David finally moved. He walked toward me slowly, like he wasn't sure if I'd allow him to approach. His face was red, and there were tears in his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked at him, this man I'd raised alone, this person I'd sacrificed so much for. I loved him. But I was also done being small for him. "I know you are," I said quietly. "But sorry isn't enough right now. You don't get to spend years making me feel inadequate and then erase it with an apology, just because you found out I'm successful by your definition." "I didn't mean," he started. "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "You meant every word you said. You believed I was mediocre. You believed I'd wasted my potential. You believed my choices made me somehow less than you. And the only thing that's changed is that you found out I have credentials that matter to you. But my value didn't change. I was always this person. You just refused to see it." Jennifer appeared at his side, her makeup smeared from crying. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. We had no idea." "You had no idea because you never asked," I said. And I was surprised by how calm I sounded. How clear. In 8 years, neither of you ever asked me what I was doing with my time, what I was working on, what my goals were. You assumed. And your assumptions were cruel. David was crying openly now. "What can I do? How can I fix this?" I thought about that for a long moment. The room had mostly cleared out, people tactfully giving us space. Rita and Carol stood nearby, my backup if I needed them. "You can start by examining why you measure people's worth by their credentials and status," I said. "You can think about all the ways you've dismissed, not just me, but probably your students, your colleagues, anyone you've decided isn't prestigious enough. And then you can decide what kind of person you want to be going forward." "Are you going to take the Columbia position?" Jennifer asked quietly. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "It's an incredible opportunity, but it's also a huge change. I'm 63. I have a life here. I have friends, a community, a home. But it's Columbia," David said, like he couldn't understand my hesitation. "Yes, it's Columbia," I agreed. "But unlike you, I've never measured my worth by institutional prestige. I'll make my decision based on where I can do the most good, where I can be most happy, where I can live most authentically." I picked up the leather portfolio Dr. Vance had given me. "I'm going home now. I need time to think, to process all of this. When I'm ready, if I'm ready, we can talk. But David, Jennifer, I need you to understand. Our relationship has fundamentally changed. I'm not your support system anymore. I'm not your comfortable, uncomplaining mother who exists to celebrate your achievements while minimizing her own. I'm a person with my own value, my own accomplishments, my own life. And you need to decide if you can respect that person." I walked away then, Carol and Rita flanking me like an honor guard. Behind me, I heard David let out a sob that sounded like something breaking. In the parking lot, Carol turned to me with shining eyes. "That was the most magnificent thing I've ever witnessed. I'm so proud of you, I could burst." "Margaret," Rita said, "what are you going to do about Columbia?" I looked at the portfolio in my hands, then up at the sky. It was still a beautiful day, sunshine and possibility. Honestly, I have no idea. A month ago, I would have said there's no way I could leave Riverside, leave my community, start over at 63 in New York City. That would have felt too risky, too ambitious. I smiled. But right now I'm thinking, maybe it's never too late to be ambitious. Maybe 63 is exactly the right age to take a leap, to be brave, to choose prestige not because someone else values it, but because I've earned it and I deserve it. Rita laughed. Dr. Margaret Porter, endowed chair at Columbia University. It has a nice ring to it. It does, I agreed. But you know what else has a nice ring to it? Dr. Margaret Porter, who stood up for herself, who refused to be diminished, who finally understood her own worth. Carol hugged me again. "So you're going to take it?" "I'm going to think about it," I said. "Really think about it. Not based on what David wants or what would be most impressive or what would prove anything to anyone. I'm going to think about what I want. What would make me happy? What feels right for this next chapter? I looked back at the faculty club, where David and Jennifer were probably still standing in the wreckage of their assumptions. But here's what I know for sure, I continued. Whether I go to Columbia or stay here, whether I become a famous professor or just continue being a librarian with a PhD, I'm done apologizing for my choices. I'm done making myself small. I'm done letting anyone, especially family, treat my life like it's something to be pitied or explained away. What about David? Rita asked gently. Will you forgive him? I considered that. Maybe. Eventually. But first he needs to do the work. Real work, not just apologizing because he's embarrassed. He needs to understand that his cruelty wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a pattern. And patterns take time to break. We walked to my car together. 3 women in our 60s, 2 of whom had just witnessed their friend step fully into her power. You know what the best part is? Carol said as I unlocked my car. The best part is that you did all of this without them. You didn't need David's approval. You didn't need Jennifer's validation. You did it for yourself, and that's why it means something. She was right. The PhD, the dissertation, the Columbia offer, they were all wonderful. But the real achievement was standing in that room and refusing to accept their narrative about my life. The real victory was finally believing in my own worth. 3 weeks later, I called Dr. Vance and accepted the position at Columbia. Not because I needed to prove anything to David, but because when I really sat with the question of what I wanted, the answer was clear. I wanted to see what I was capable of at this level. I wanted to push myself. I wanted to be brave. I'm 63 years old, and I'm starting a new career at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. I'm leaving behind a community I love, a home I'm comfortable in, a life I've built over decades. And I'm terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. David and I are in therapy together. It was my condition for trying to rebuild our relationship. He's starting to understand the depth of his cruelty, though it's painful for him. Jennifer sent me a long letter of apology that felt genuine. We'll see. But here's what I want other people to know, especially women my age, especially people who've been told they're too old, too late, too settled. It's never too late. Not to go back to school, not to start over, not to be ambitious, not to take risks, not to stand up for yourself. I spent years making myself small for people who couldn't see my value, and then I spent 8 years quietly proving not to them, but to myself that I was capable of more than they imagined. The PhD was wonderful, but the real transformation was internal. It was learning to value myself regardless of external validation. So if you're 63 and thinking about making a change, do it. If you're 70 and want to start something new, start. If you're 50 and worried it's too late, it's not. It's never too late. And if people in your life can't see your worth, can't celebrate your ambitions, can't support your dreams, let them be wrong. Live your life anyway. Build your empire anyway. Earn your doctorate anyway. Take that leap anyway. Because you don't need permission to be magnificent. You don't need validation to be valuable. You just need courage and the belief that you're worth investing in, no matter what age the calendar says you are. I start at Columbia in the fall. I'm scared. I'm excited. I'm ready. And I've never been more certain that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.